So good afternoon and welcome. Today our objective is to introduce you to our consultancy firm, provide an overview of our process optimization capability, and demonstrate the Decisions workflow automation tool. So firstly, from a firm's perspective, we provide specialist consulting and project delivery services, and our clients tend to be leading banking institutions, dynamic fintech startups, and also a variety of financial service providers across the UK. We tend to help our clients in three key areas: strategy formulation and implementation, regulatory alignment and compliance, that's been a big piece over the last 10 years, and then improving operational efficiency through technology and automation. And I think it's at this point, which is probably a good time to hand over to Peter Weir, who's our business process lead and partner of the firm. Peter.
Great, thank you very much, Parish. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be with you here today. And if we just finish off a couple of those introductions there, so along with Parish and myself, we also have, as Parish just mentioned, we've got Gordon Jones, CEO of Decisions, and Jessica Potter and Athena Harrell at Decisions as well. So thank you very much, guys, for joining us. A couple of quick housekeeping points just before we kick things off further. Questions. We're going to be really delighted to take your questions today. We've got some time set out for that just after we take you through the proof of concept later on. And if you could possibly post your questions to the Zoom chat board as and when the mood takes you, we'll be getting those to the most appropriate person on the panel here to answer them for you later on. And secondly, we really do intend to keep to time today, so Parish will be making sure that we keep things on the move, so we'll definitely be finishing up on time. Okay, so if we just give some background, some objectives, what are we trying to achieve today? What are we trying to get to? Well, the one thing that we know to expect in the financial services industry is that we have to be able to handle change. We have to be flexible. You know, it might be that we've got that we need to deal with regulatory change. It might be that, as with our civil scheme, we have to scale up suddenly our processing when certain events require it, or maybe it's another of very many other potential scenarios that could happen. But we know that we're going to handle events as they arrive. We have to be able to deal with the world as it is. And in that light, our COVID-19 situation is very much just the latest opportunity for firms to review what their business processes are, to review their product sets, to work out, are we doing things in the best way that we possibly can? Are we providing the best customer experience that we possibly can? So in Pryce-Williams, from the clients that we talk to, from the contacts we speak to in industry, it's very clear that workflow automation, business rules, these are increasingly key tools for many companies in simplifying their processes, in enhancing their products, as well as improving their ability to be more flexible, to manage change more effectively. So today we want to encourage you, we want to give you a bit of a chance to step back, to think about how things could be, to think about what your ideal business outcomes really are at the moment. How can we build better products? How can we run those products more efficiently? How can we improve the customer experience? And once we've got that vision for the future, how do we make this progress happen? So the three things, key objectives for today. We want, as Parish says, we want to introduce you to our business process optimization service. We want to introduce you to the Decisions platform that provides the workflow automation and business rules engine. And we want to take you through our proof of concept using the Decisions platform for optimizing lending processes with a particular use case of the coronavirus business interruptions loan scheme or CBILs, a particular use case that we want to take you through today. So let's introduce you then to our business process optimization service. Well, we know you all know, we all know, that no two companies, no two process situations, no two optimization opportunities are exactly the same. Even with the same system, there are going to be different ways of doing things. There are different stakeholder requirements internally and sometimes externally. So that there's never exactly the same scenario twice. And that's why for our business process optimization service, it's always going to be bespoke to a company's individual situation, the stakeholders' individual and specific needs, and the scope of the work that we then agree. At a high level, we generally look to have three main phases, or we set out three main phases that we can help clients with. So defining the business case, building out the business requirements, and implementing those changes. The business case we see is that the absolute fundamental. That's about making sure we identify what the pain points are, making sure that we've really got a clear view, as clear as possible a view about what your ideal business outcomes are that you want to achieve, and getting an understanding about what the costs will be to be able to take forward the projects to make those things happen. So that's getting your business case to the place where you can make an informed decision, where you can be comfortable that you are setting off on the right foot. Building the business requirements, well, I guess many of you will be familiar with how that work would be. It's really where all of the detail, the very detailed business analysis work will come in, the very detailed process flows being built out and requirements around how everything needs to be built together. And then implementing the changes, not only the project management side of things, but also ensuring that the system development stays on track, still delivering what it needs to, and making sure that everything actually does come together to deliver those outcomes that you need. Okay, so that's been a bit about the business process optimization service. Well, let's move forwards then towards our proof of concept. Let's give you just a quick bit more background, an introduction to decisions. Well, for CBILs, our loan scheme, I'm going to assume that the vast majority of you guys are very familiar with the scheme and will have an understanding, more or less, around how your individual firms are handling things for that. Just for those small number of you that may be less familiar, I'll just note we've got a scheme here, UK government set-up scheme that's essentially a wrapper of government guarantees, partial government guarantees around a set of 4 standard lending products with specific eligibility requirements, as we'll see. So the scheme's been around for a few weeks. We expect that firms will already have got in place all the specific tweaks that they needed to put in, or they have been able to put in to handle the volumes there. And from what we've heard, we expect that the scaling up there has probably started to identify where there are some manual processes that are causing more problems, where there's a bit more work in terms of automation that can be done. So that's a bit of background around our use case. Gordon, if I could possibly hand over to you for a couple of moments to give us a bit of an introduction to the Decisions platform, please.
Sure, I'll give you the 60-second overview here. So Decisions is a no-code software development platform with a rules engine and a workflow engine. And being no-code means just that. So no Java, no proprietary scripting language. You don't have to be a programmer to build software in Decisions. It's truly drag and drop, click to configure. We're also a platform, which means things like permissions, security, API generation, version control. We manage all that. Finally, our rules engine and workflow engine allow for building and managing the changes that regularly occur in complex business processes. And it's best seen through watching the software live, and the proof of concept you're about to see was built entirely on Decisions without writing code, and it was done in about 2 weeks' time. So everything you see was put together in roughly 2 weeks.
Great, thank you very much for that, Gordon. So moving closer then, almost onto our proof of concept. So I'll just call out, and Jessica, thank you for putting out the process flow on screen for you guys there. So I've reviewed the CBILs scheme, pulled out the key principles, the key details as set out by the British Business Bank, and based on that, I've developed a very simple framework of what that lending process looks like. So obviously, again, all of your individual firms will have your very specific processes, whether you've got a different credit committee here or a different place that you do your credit scoring, and whatever other systems you may have in your stack at the moment. So we've not tried to build out a completely end-to-end full 100% level of detail. What we're trying to do here is to give you a framework that shows you how we can start to put together a better solution using decisions, and then we can start to talk about how we'll be able to plug more and more detail in and more system integration in due course. So Jessica has brought this framework to life in this proof of concept you're about to see. As I say, I'd very much be keen that you take the step back, you take a thought around how can you start to envisage that this will start to make life better in your firms. So over to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Gordon. And thank you, Parrish. Before I jump into the actual decisions platform and the application, what I'd love to do is just run through this high-level diagram that we have on the screen to give you a little bit of context before we dive in. So for today's demonstration, we're actually going to see this from two different perspectives. We're going to see that customer or that business who's going to be applying for CBILs product. And then we're also going to get to see it from the lender perspective. So a user would be coming in and actually reviewing that application and making the decision to approve or deny it. So where we're going to start is when this process is kicked off, that first initial contact, they're going to be providing some high-level eligibility details, which will then be run through the decisions rule engine to determine if they will be eligible for a CBILs product or not. After that eligibility is determined, let's say they're not determined, we're just going to give them a nice little notification letting them know that they're unlikely to be approved. However, if they are approved or they are eligible, we're then going to run another check to see if they're an existing customer or not. If they are an existing customer, we'll just allow them to log in with some details, maybe a company ID or an email address. If they're not an existing customer, we will give them the ability to actually create a new account with your organization. And then from there, whoever is filling out that application is going to choose the CBILs product that they're actually applying for. And then based on the selection they make for that CBILs product, Decisions will then display the appropriate application and display the appropriate documents that are going to be required to submit that application. Now, after the customer or that company has provided that application and documents, we're then going to send it back to the lender view, where the lender is actually going to have an assignment where they come in, review that application, review that supporting documentation, and then ultimately make the final decision of whether to approve or deny. Now, either way, whether they are approved or denied, the customer will be notified of that final decision. So from here, I'm going to jump out of the slides and we'll go ahead and dive into our demonstration for today. Now, where we're actually going to start with today's demonstration is from my email inbox. So what we've done is, this might be an email that your organization is sending out to all of your existing clients. And one thing I want you to keep in mind, as we're walking through these different forms, these different emails, these different dashboards, everything that you see today is 100% customizable. So down from the styling to the messaging that you see here, these can all be formatted to fit your organization's branding and messaging. Now, in this particular email, we're just letting the customer know, because you're an existing customer, we want to extend the opportunity to apply for financial assistance. We'll just give them some information on the type of assistance they can apply for. And then we're going to provide a link where they can actually click that link to kick off the process. So I'll go ahead and say, or I'll click here to get started. And again, that's just going to kick off the process that we walked through in our diagram. And I am a little impatient here, so I might try clicking that link again. Bear with me one moment. Oh, there we go. And this initial form that you're seeing, this is just that eligibility data that we're capturing. A couple of things that I'll point out on this form is we have included a couple of features that are going to enhance that end user experience. So for example, if I provide an anticipated borrower amount of over £30,000, another option is going to appear. So just another piece of data that I can provide for that lender. But I'll go ahead and make a few of these selections. And one thing that I do want you to keep in mind here is all of these selections that we're making are going to be run through that eligibility rules engine to determine if they are in fact eligible or not. But I'll go ahead and we can click submit. And here, because I am an existing customer and because of the details that I've provided, I am eligible, here I can just provide some login details to move on to the next step in the process. Now, one thing that I will mention as well is, let's say your organization is using existing single sign-on technology, something like SAML or Active Directory. We can integrate with those different single sign-on technologies to make this login process a little bit more seamless. Now I'll go ahead and provide those details and hit login. And you'll see in just a moment what we're actually doing with those details. We're doing a database lookup to actually grab some company information. Now from here, I'm just going to be prompted to pick the CBILs product that I'd like to apply for. So for today, I'll select Asset Finance. I'll hit Next. And then here's those company details that we were able to actually bring in and automatically populate this form with. So again, that was just a database lookup. We were using that email address as well as that company ID to go grab these pieces of information and automatically populate it. Again, just providing for that better end user experience. Now we will also have the option to update any of these details if that's necessary. So maybe my email address has changed, I'd have the ability to change that here. But for now, I'll go ahead and click Next. And because asset finance was the type of product that I selected, now I'm being prompted to walk through this asset finance application. So I'll go ahead and provide some details here. Maybe our company acquired a new delivery truck. I can also provide the age of the asset. So maybe this is 6 months old. The value of the asset, I was applying for £35,000. So I'll go ahead and make that the value. I can provide my payment terms, so maybe it's 3 years. And one thing that I want you to keep in mind here as well is all of these questions that you're seeing are completely customizable. So if these questions aren't necessarily relevant to your process, they can absolutely be updated or tweaked to fit your organization's needs. Now maybe I'll also provide a reason. We needed to increase delivery capability or capacity. And then from here, I'll go ahead and select Next. And here I'm just being prompted to provide that supporting documentation that's required for this application. So as I'm actually adding these documents, I'll point out a couple of things that are happening. The first being, as I'm actually providing these documents, we're going to have a nice visual indicator to let that user know that they have, in fact, successfully uploaded that document. So it's going to change from an X mark to a check mark. Now, here I am just uploading some images or some PDF files, but I will also mention that this same feature can be used to upload Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, even pictures from your phone. So you have a lot of flexibility in how these documents are being brought into your system. And then the last thing that I'll mention here is, let's say that customer is going through and they don't have all of the documentation on hand that's required to submit this application. Well, we have also given them the ability to click Save. They'll be emailed a link where they can then come back and provide the supporting documentation at a later time when they have it together. But from here, we'll go ahead and take the happy path. I'll hit Submit. Here I have a message saying, thank you for submitting your application and supporting documentation. Our team is reviewing the information and you'll be informed as soon as a decision has been made. So I'm actually going to switch roles now that I've completed that CBILs application from that customer perspective. I'm now going to work this as a lender. And as a lender, I might log into this custom dashboard that you see here. And again, this was just created in a drag and drop environment. So the layout down to the details being displayed is 100% up to you. So whatever information is pertinent to your process, we can absolutely display here. Now for our particular process, we have a few KPIs or key performance indicators across the top. So I can see things like how much money is currently in flight to be made a decision on or to have a decision made on. I can see how many applications are pending review, how many applications have been approved, how many applications have been denied. And then next to that, we have a nice bar chart. So let's say we need to do some sort of analysis on how many products by type are being applied for. We have a nice visual way to look at this and see exactly how many applications for specific products have been applied. Now, another thing I'll point out here is, let's say I want a detailed report on only those asset finance applications. I can simply select this, and now I have a custom report showing me all of the applications pertaining to asset finance. I'll go ahead and close out of here. Now on this dashboard, below that to the right-hand side, we have what's called an activity panel. And this activity panel is just functioning as an audit trail for each one of the line items in this report. So it's showing me things like all of the different states that it's traveled through. It's showing me the current state that it's sitting in. So we can see my application is currently sitting in pending review. But it's also capturing things like any comments or documents that were added along the way so that I have visibility into all of the information that I need. Another thing this activity panel is capturing is any assignment information tied to each one of these applications. So we'll actually come back and look at this assignment information in just a minute after I complete the assignment and talk about some of the changes there. Now, the last thing I'll talk about on this dashboard before I take action on it is this actual report. So this report is showing me all of the applications that have been submitted, and we have added a color rule. And all this color rule is it's giving me as the lender a nice visual indicator to let me know that this particular application is waiting for me to take action on it. So I have an assignment tied to it. And these color rules are customizable. All it's doing is looking at a particular piece of information and deciding whether to display that visual indicator or not. Now, our reports are also actionable. So as a lender, I can come in here and I can work this assignment right here from my dashboard. I can right-click on this line item and I have a list of actions that I can take. Now, the list of actions that I see, that is governed by who I am as a user as well as the state of that particular application. So I'll go ahead and select Review Asset Finance Application. And this is just going to bring me to a review form where I can review all of those company details. I can switch over to another tab. I can see all of the asset details that were provided on the application. I can also scroll through and see all of the different documents that were provided. So I can do a little quality check here, make sure those documentations are the correct documents. And then finally, we have a comments tab. So if I'm denying this application, I'll be able to provide exactly that reason. And that reason can be stored, it can be sent out to the customer. But again, just a place where you can add some additional details. But for today, I'll go ahead and approve this application. And as I work this task and approve that application, what you'll notice in the background is a couple of things have changed. So our KPIs have updated and changed. We can see I only have one application pending review, that these numbers have updated. And then you'll also notice that that color rule or that visual indicator has gone away since I have in fact taken that action on it. So here we have a very dynamic view into our data, into our dashboard. So as changes are being made, as assignments are being worked, this is going to update and change for us automatically. Now, the last thing that I'll point out in this activity panel is now that I've worked this task, when I look at this assignment now, I can actually see how long it took for that user to complete the assignment. So this is great for being able to dive into your data and see things like process bottlenecks, or maybe just look for anywhere in your process where it can be optimized. Now, what I'll do before we jump into the back end is I do want to kind of quickly go over what it would look like to create an account. So we understand that currently only existing clients would be extended that offer to apply for a CBILs product. However, we wanted to think ahead and give those companies who are not existing clients the opportunity to create an account with your organization and apply for a CBILs product. So we've created this landing page, an area where a user might come to kick off that process. Now, I'm not going to walk through the full process again, but I did just want to show you what that user experience might look like for creating a new account. So to kick off the process, I'll just click this Apply Now button. And you'll notice it's the same initial form, so I can provide those eligibility details. I can click Submit. But now I'm just being asked, am I an existing customer? I'll say no. And this is really the form that I want to show you, or that user interaction that I want to show you. So here I can actually provide what my username might be. And we've added some validations to some of these, or to these forms, or these form components. So here, this is actually going to require that I provide a username with a valid email address. And then for our password, on this second box here, we actually have a validation rule or a validation check just in place to make sure that that password that they're providing in the confirmation box does in fact match the initial password they provided. I'll go ahead and click Submit. Now that account has been created and I can move on with applying for this product. Now, we won't walk through that again, but again, we just wanted to get you guys thinking about how you might have other users interact with your organization. Now, one thing that I did forget to actually show you before I walk through this is I mentioned in our high-level diagram that customer would be notified if they got approved or not. So I'll just quickly jump in and show you that email. So because I was approved, we can see I was just sent a notification letting me know that I have in fact been approved. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to jump into the back end. And we'll just take a sneak peek at how this application was actually put together. So I'm just going to very quickly walk through our main flow here. And what you'll notice is in this flow designer, this is our decisions flow designer, all we're doing here is we're actually stringing steps together to build out that process. And you'll notice that it actually looks very similar to that high-level diagram that I showed you guys just a few moments ago. So where we're actually capturing that initial eligibility information. Here's where we're running it through a set of rules to determine if they're eligible or not. If they're not eligible, they will be displayed that message that they are not. If they are eligible, here we can actually move on to provide some login details. We'll do that database lookup to grab all of their company information. Here we're choosing the product that they're actually applying for. And why I point this out is this is actually going to be important for this next step that I'm going to dive into. But before I actually dive into this step, I want to talk about what these black boxes are in decisions. All of these are linked flows. And what linked flows allow you to do in decisions is actually chain workflow together to accomplish more sophisticated processing. And really what that's doing is allowing you to make your processes modular. And what I mean by that is if I open up this linked flow, you can see essentially it's just a group of steps that can be reused over and over again in different processes. But inside of this linked flow, this particular step here is actually examining the product that we selected on that previous form. And then it's going to tell our workflow which path to send it down based on that product they've selected. And in our example, I selected asset finance. So it traveled down the asset finance path and it displayed the appropriate application. So here, again, you have a very dynamic way to have your users interact with this process based on certain selections they make. Now, after they provide that application, here's where we're uploading that supporting documentation. And then from here, we're really just storing off that data or saving that data to the database. I'll jump out of here. And I won't go into this next linked flow here, but this next linked flow is just where we are creating that assignment for the lender to come in and actually approve or deny it. And then from there, our process has ended. But as you can see, with the flow designer, you're able to actually design just like you would be in maybe something like a Visio diagram. But as you're actually designing it and building it in decisions, it's building a live application. And you're able to do that with no code. And now the last,
just because, right, I'm just going to jump in here and point out that this is one of our graphical designers. So we have other graphical designers to create databases and data. We have graphical designers that build business rules. We have graphical designers that build the pages, the dashboards, the reports. The flow is the main logic engine, but we have a whole sequence of these graphical designers that are all drag and drop, click to configure.
Yep, absolutely. And what I've actually opened up here on my screen is the rule set that was running that was determining if that customer was eligible or not. And this is a rule set, which in Decisions is just one of the 8 different styles of rules that we offer. And the rule set is just a group of rules with order and dependency. So all that I mean by that is it's taking in the same common input data, and it's going to run each individual rule in this rule set using that data. Now, in our particular example here, this is a logical rule set where it's going to give me that true or false outcome or that true or false path that I can use. But I do also want to mention here that these rule sets can also be used for things like scoring. So let's say you have a lending process where you need to determine the APR, what that APR might look like. You can actually use a set of rules and decisions to come up with a custom scoring model that fits your organization. And then finally, I'll also mention that each one of these rules can output data as well. But just to give you an idea for what our visual rules designer looks like, I'll just quickly open up one of these rules and show you a sneak peek into that. if I open up this rule within this individual rule set, this is our statement rule. So just another style of rule and decisions, just that if, then, else way of displaying business logic. But as you can see here, because we have this visual designer, this is really what empowers those subject matter experts to come in here and quickly configure or quickly make changes to these rules without having to know how to write code. I'll go ahead and close out of here. I'll do a quick time check here and see if we have any questions that have come in. Oh, okay. So what I'll do very quickly then, and then we'll turn it back over to Q&A, is I do want to show those users on the call who are going to interested in building in decisions one other feature that we offer, and that's our debugger. And this is really important here because this is what allows you to actually test in the same visual paradigm that you're building. So I'll actually go ahead and click debug here, and we're going to debug this main process. So when I hit play, you can see in the background, we actually have this going through the same way that it's set up in our visual designer, but now I'm actually able to interact with this process. So when I kicked it off, I'm going to be able to fill out or interact with this form that was designed. And this time, I'm actually going to submit some data that's going to take me down the not eligible path, just so you guys can get a peek into that. But I'll go ahead and hit submit. And we can see, unfortunately, this application is unlikely to be eligible for CBILs at this time. I'll close out of here. And what I really want to talk about is the debugger. So what's great here is not only do I have these steps laid out exactly like they were laid out in the designer, but I have this orange line that's highlighting the path that my flow took. So I can see exactly the path that's been taken based on the data that I've provided. Now, additionally, because we have this rule set running, and that was that set of rules I just showed you a moment ago, I might want to check how each one of these individual rules evaluated as well. If I navigate to the left-hand side of my screen, I have this tree that's showing me each of the different flows and each of the different rules that were executed while I was testing. So I can actually come in here and see how each individual rule in this rule set evaluated. And we can see here that because one of these rules evaluated false, that's why we were taking that false path and that customer was not eligible. Now, the last thing that I'll point out in this debugger, and it's actually my favorite part of the debugger, is the fact that I can click on any one of these steps and I can view the input and the output data. So I can see exactly how information is flowing into each step and exactly how information is flowing out. So this is going to be a very powerful tool while you're building to come in here and pinpoint any issues or troubleshoot during your build process. I'll go ahead and close out of here, and we'll jump back into our Q&A portion.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that, Jessica. That was excellent stuff. So, questions and answers. Just before we get to that, let me just call out, we're very keen to share with you in about 10 minutes time an offer that we have around the business case phase of our business process optimization service. So looking to share that with you in a few minutes. We're still very intent. We will be finishing on time today. And as mentioned, please do, if you've got some questions, start to post them up onto the chat board. I'm just having a look there at the moment. And I should also say, don't worry if we don't have time today to get through all of the questions, or if you've got a question and we aren't able quite to answer it fully while we're on the call now, we shall be following up a bit later on with anything that we haven't been able to answer or haven't been able to fully answer later on. Okay, so just keeping an eye open for the questions. We have, just in the run-up to this session, we've been talking to a number of our industry contacts. We have got one or two questions that have been raised to us, so I think I might just call out one or two of those now while you guys are still thinking of the questions you want to ask and getting them into that chat board. So Jessica, we've got a question for you here. You were just talking around the credit scoring. Well, could you possibly just tell us a bit more about the integration of decisions with external systems? So, for example, whether it can pull in details of rule sets from an external system, or how it could work with an external system that performs the credit scoring?
Yeah, absolutely. And we can show that from two different perspectives. I'm actually going to jump out of these slides, and I think it will show better in the actual product itself. But let's say you want to call decisions, call that rule set from an external system, and you want to pass that data in. So we have integration options available on every single one of our flows, rules, dashboards, reports, where you can actually set up those calls. So I'm actually going to, let me dive into our rule set actually. And I'll go to those integration details. So when I hit integration details here, I can just make some selections of how I want to interact with it. But the important part is when I hit Show Service API, this is actually going to generate the URL or endpoint that I need to call to actually interact with that rule set. But it's also going to give me a serialized representation of the inputs as well as the expected outputs. So this is going to give me, with a couple clicks, is going to give me all of the details I need to set up those calls to interact with that rule set. Now on the flip side, if you would like to use decisions to call out to an external system rather than having an external system call decisions, we allow for that as well. So beyond our built-in integrations that we have, if there's a custom integration that you would like to include, we allow you to use create data types or integration. Let's say I want to add a REST service here, I hit create. And then again, I'm just going to walk through another style of wizard here where I provide it with those details. But the important part here is when I hit OK or I hit save, decisions is going to generate a step that I can then just drag and drop into my workflows to actually interact with those external systems. Great question.
Yeah, and Jessica, maybe pull that up again, that data type integration, because I think this is kind of an important piece to the platform in that she showed the example for a REST service right there. If you could back up, I just wanted to show that
yep.
You know, you can add web services of different types. So OData, REST service, SOAP services, WCF. You can also integrate with external databases. You can easily create JSON, XML integrations. And as part of the platform, we have native integrations. We've already built out steps that integrate to a lot of common software platforms like SAP, Microsoft Dynamics, tools like UiPath, you know, the RPA tools. So we've got a whole slew of native integrations that you can install. Salesforce. We make it easy to build new integrations, and we have a lot of pre-built integrations.
So Jessica and Gordon, if I can add to that as Parish here, just to bring it a bit more to life to some of our colleagues in the lending space. So for example, if you wanted to bring data in from a credit reference agency that offered an API, so let's say it's Experian as an example, you could do that with decisions. That's a really good example of pulling in data from an external provider. You could also potentially connect it with your payment system. So that's another kind of option that you have. So if you're using an external payment platform to run your monthly payments, that may be an external provider to your particular lending house. You may not have an internal payment platform that's bespoke to yourselves. You may use WorldPay or your bank or something like that to actually run those payments. You could then do that kind of integration as well. So those are just two examples of how decisions can integrate with external platforms.
Yeah, Parish, that's a great point, and I'll point out we do a lot of work in the lending space, and every organization there's a slew of services that you generally have to integrate with. So you know, the Experian is a good example. Experian is actually a customer of ours as well. They utilize the rules engine, but as part of the loan processing, there's just dozens of different services that different clients of ours have used. You know, for things like certified payment schedules that have calculated these things out, that are called out. So we act as kind of that middleware, that glue that pulls all of these things together and allows you to build the process that you want, that you need.
And Gordon, just following on from that, Michelle, so I've seen the question you just fired up, and Jessica, you've just answered it. But yeah, so we're saying that decisions really, if there is an API that an external service has, or if we can get something built, then there is the possibility of integrating systems together. So I mean, one other thing I just wanted to call out there, and it's worth thinking about. Well, Jessica, you were talking around, well, we can start to build the credit scoring rules if we wanted to in Decisions. Well, let's just think we've got a possibility that Decisions can do a certain amount of functionality today. We could use an external system for this part of the process, but we're still going to have the possibility for a phase 2, for a later development, to bring more of that functionality into the system if that is the appropriate thing to do for the organization, if that's going to provide more benefit, if that's going to make things run more quickly. So Decisions is clearly not just, here's a box, it will do what it does. It's something that will be configurable and extensible over time.
Yeah, and just to take 30 more seconds on that topic, we're typically used, you know, the lending approval rules is the tricky part, and different lenders have different rules and focus in different areas. You know, there are software applications for mortgage, for automobiles, but especially when somebody's serving a very specific part of that market, you know, the mortgage industry, they might have rules that are quite different than these standard software applications utilize. And so they can't out of the box, or they want to focus and differentiate themselves from the competition by creating different approval logic. And that's where we come in.
Cool. Thank you very much for that, Gordon. And apologies for those on dialing you won't have seen on the Q&A. So if I just call out, Michelle, your question, which is around, well, does the integration use API to be able to connect to a bank account in a third-party bank? And I think essentially, Jessica was saying the answer is yes, isn't it? So open banking is the main, well, not platform, but the main set of standards in the UK now around connections between or connections to banks and their data. So Jessica, I mean, I don't know if you want to say anything further around open banking or the use of APIs to connect to other banks.
Yeah, absolutely. So all I'll add is just quick here. You know, as long as there is an open API layer, we can absolutely make that connection. So open banking and any other third-party banking system that has an open API layer.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much for that. And just having a look here, one other question, and again for Jessica, if I can possibly just call out before we look to wrap things up here. So we've got some clients where they will say to us, right, well, I've already got my customer portal, I've already got my internal intranet. You know, how could Decisions work for me with that? Well, could you possibly tell us, Jessica, you know, what possibilities there are for integrating Decisions and the forms and the processes that we've seen into those existing intranet pages, into those existing portals?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to look very similar to the integration details that I showed on the rules. So if you're looking to embed dashboards, or you want to interact with UI that's built in Decisions in an existing portal, again, all you have to do is just go to this integration details at the top. And what we do is we actually have the ability to interact with the UI or form. And when I hit generate UI code, I'll be able to actually have the information I need to embed that within that existing portal. So absolutely, you know, we understand that a lot of companies already have existing platforms or portals in place, and you might not necessarily want to go in through the Decisions portal. So we make that very easy to make those connections.
I'll also point out that about 40% of our clients don't use our UI at all. So they use Decisions as a back-end logic machine to control the process. So if you want, you know, to really have tighter control over your UI experience with your customers, and you build that in Angular, React, any front-end technology, you can do that and have Decisions be all of the logic in the back behind those pages.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you very much for that. Guys, I'm just having a look at the time. I think we're going to have to just call things a wrap there for questions for today. If anybody on the call, if any of you do have any questions that you're still thinking about the right way to put it, please do give us a shout in due course. Be more than happy to answer any more of your questions on anything to do with the Decisions platform or anything to do with the process optimization service that we've been talking to you about as well. Okay, great. So looking towards wrapping up our call then. Before I do so, I mentioned before, I'm very keen to share with you today the offer that we're setting out. And this is around performing the business case phase of our process optimization service. So you remember our three main phases are defining the business case, building the business requirements, and the implementing change. The defining the business case, our foundational phase, we're really keen to help you perform this, to help you complete this. For our offer today, we're setting out performing this for one process. Looking to do this for really quite an incredibly low price, as you've got on screen there. We're really keen to do this, particularly because at Pryce-Williams, the key thing for us, as Parish mentioned earlier on, it's about making progress happen for you and for your firms. And we can only make that work, we can only make that progress happen if we know what it is, if everybody is bought in to what that progress needs to be, to what those ideal outcomes need to be. So we see this as the absolute fundamental part of the service that we're offering here. So we really want to help you with that. So please do get in touch with me, with Parish, at any stage after this call to discuss further if you've got particular requirements, if you think we can help you with that in any way. Okay, so that's enough of the sales pitch just for the moment. Wrapping things up today. So we've introduced you in the call today to Pryce-Williams and our business process optimization service. We've introduced you to the Decisions platform. We've shown you how easy it is to use and how configurable it is, and how extensible it will be to last the test of time. And we've also taken you through a proof of concept that hopefully has given you more of a flavour about how decisions can start to be built in to your organisations and can start to optimise those processes that you have. So if you've been inspired today to think about how you can optimise any of your processes or products, please do give us a shout. Please do get in touch, and we'd be more than happy to discuss with you how we can help you further to make progress happen. Thanks very much to our presenters today. Thanks very much to Parish, to Gordon, to Jessica. And thank you particularly for Jessica for building the proof of concept that we've been taking through so well today. Finally, a big thank you to all of you guys for attending today, for dialing into the call. It's been really great to have the chance to share thoughts and considerations with you and to answer questions. Again, my name has been Peter Weir, Pryce-Williams. We look forward to talking to you again very soon and to help you make progress happen. Thank you very much.